And welcome again to Cottage Talk. I'm Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Steve Reynolds and Mike Gregg. This is our post-match show of Fulham's 3-0 victory against Aston Villa. We have a lot to talk about in regards to the show. Mike was there. Mike will give his firsthand take for what he saw at Craven Cottage, and Steve and I watched the match, so this should be fun. Before we get going any further, I just want to mention, as always, please do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. It helps other Fulham supporters find us. Also, as everyone probably knows, because I keep saying it, Cottage Talk is now part of the talkSPORT fan network. Okay, Mr. Gregg, thank you so much for joining us on such short notice. You were at Craven Cottage. Feel free to share your thoughts on this victory here.
Well, it was a really good night. Cottage under the lights, as everyone knows, is the best place to watch a game of football, and the quality of the football we played was top notch, best of the season easily, and compared to the recent Premier seasons we've had, probably the best performance overall. And Villa were not good. It has to be said, they were not good, and we can probably talk about that later. But overall,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was just a brilliant night, especially after a bit of a bumpy ride we've had recently. It was good to get back on track and prove a few doubters wrong. And, there's a couple of talking points as well from the game. But overall, you walk away from the game just talking about the quality of it, the chances we had. Every player performed well, and the thoughts of struggling, relegation, and all that get put to the back of your head for certainly until the next game. Okay. But no, it was a great night. Yeah.
Okay, excellent stuff. Okay, Mr. Reynolds, over to you. Give me your opening thoughts of this 3-0 victory through your eyes, and then I'll go back to Mike.
I think actually Fulham surprised me because I thought they would sit more back. I mean, I went for a tight 1-0 win. I was surprised that I think it was the attitude, and I think that is starting to come through more and more game after game. There is an attitude now within the team that is basically not looking at can we stay up, above 18th or whatever.
Right.
I think they're looking higher. And I think it was, certainly the first half, we were, as Mike says, you look at Tigana, my God, you could be 2-0 down with 5 minutes to play under Tigana, and he still had belief. So, yeah, I was very impressed. Very impressed.
Okay, excellent stuff. And, Mike, I'm going to go back to you because I'm actually going to share something that you actually tweeted out, and it involves your father. And I find it interesting, and because we are just mentioning Jean Tigana, you mentioned this in this post on Twitter. So I just want to share that. Just give me a second while I share that and get your thoughts on how this came about. This when you were talking to your father, this is what you tweeted. Sat with my old man in the middle of second half. He turns to me and says, "We aren't going down. This is as good as it was under Tigana." Mike, that's pretty high praise. Just talk about this conversation you had with your father during the match.
Yeah, so I think it was probably 2, or it may have been 3-0. You could probably check on the timeline, but it was just a case of the quality of football we'd been watching. We're obviously attacking the Hammersmith end where we sit now as well. And, if you look back over the years, what we're talking about there is, under Roy, we had some great years and, Europe, all of that. But I think everyone would admit it wasn't the most attacking, fluid football that we'd ever seen. Right. And yes, under Jukanovic in the Championship, I loved his football, Russ. You know how much I rave about him.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it was the freedom and the passing and the quality that we saw out there. And my dad just said that, and I'd add also what he said was, you look at the team out there, and would it possibly maybe only 2 or 3 players away from a team that maybe at its best, you're looking top 8, possibly. You look at players, if they're all playing to their ability, but if we could find, obviously, a quality right back, and maybe another really good centre half, and another midfielder, and then suddenly you're on a different level, aren't you? And that's what we were talking about. So it's the quality of player we're looking at, and then since 2013-14, when we got relegated and we're up and down and in the Championship, we were talking more about the Premier League. Last year was brilliant, but I have to say, at its best, what we've seen this year, and Steve mentioned it, we're not like under Parker, 1-0 sit back. Silva doesn't play like that. He plays with a freedom. And sometimes it might be a case of, can we score more than we let in? But, it really is good football. Polina in the middle there. He is, he's not a top 6 player, he's top 4. Yeah. We've just got to keep him and build around him. And
I agree, Mike.
So that's what that was about. It was just a moment in the game where we were, absolutely ripping them apart, and we're good value, even with them down to 10 men and the issues they've got, But yeah, there was a high middle of the game, So, yeah.
Okay, excellent stuff. All right, guys, before we really break this down, I want to mention this because as I'm watching the broadcast, and they talked about this, that the talk after the match, Mike and Stephen, I'm sure you're going to agree with me on this. The focus was not on Fulham's victory, but it was on Steven Gerrard at the time potentially getting sacked, and then he gets sacked. And I got to tell you how irritated this made me. So this morning, I decided to listen to talkSPORT, and I listened to Sam Matterface. And what irritated me about this, and I want to get your thoughts, because Steve and I have talked a lot about this, Mike, and again, you can go back in history how Fulham never get their due in the media, and there are media members that are Fulham supporters. We know that. But this really irritated me because this was all about what Aston Villa didn't do in this match and what Gerrard didn't do. And there was so little talk on Fulham. And when there was talk on Fulham, Sam Matterface basically said, I'm paraphrasing, he still expects Fulham to be in a relegation battle. Now, I don't. You and I have been going back and forth on Twitter on that. But I found that a little bit of the old media situations with Fulham, looking at the history, looking at the stats, and not watching the beautiful football that you saw last night, Mike. And as I tweeted, I don't think Sam has watched much of Fulham, because if he did, he might not be saying that. So I'm curious your view of what the pundits and what the media was saying after the match, where we've got this great victory, we've got this great performance, and everything is about Gerrard and Aston Villa, Mike.
Yeah, but it's not unexpected, is it, Russ? That is the way the media is. It's Liverpool obsessed, it's West Ham obsessed, it's Arsenal obsessed, and Gerrard being the pin-up boy for England, the golden age of the players who didn't achieve diddly squat, and that's the story, isn't it? The story is him, the story is Lampard, young English coaches, and and I can't blame him for after a game. It's a big story.
Yep.
Very rarely does a manager get sacked 10 minutes after a press conference midweek. So I can completely understand that, that kind of focus. And in some ways, yes, we want the plaudits. In other ways, fine, spend that time on Gerrard and whatever. We got 3 points and we move on to the next game. And the focus will come up. I'm tweeting this morning the stats and figures that I usually do.
Right.
And, my target is still 38 points, and, we're ahead of the target that I've set. And, we will be okay. I don't really have any doubts on that. But it's so tight, and give it another 2 or 3 losses, and you're back down in the bottom 6. So you could mention Sam Matterface, who he is. He's very Marmite, isn't he, for fans? You might not get that expression, Russ, but
I get it.
Yeah, it's you can take or leave him, can't you? But
right.
It's there's some Fulham fans in the press, and they were still obsessing with Gerrard because it was the big story, and
right.
so I'll let them have it. Also, in many ways, the sending off, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
Not a big deal that is going to be made about whether Mitrovic, feigned it or whatever.
Yeah.
Let them forget about it. I'd rather we sort of sneaked around in the middle, going up without anyone noticing us.
You know what, Mike? That's a good point. Steve, any thoughts on what Mike shared and me bringing up this topic? You and I talked about this.
I think the entire football press is obsessed with the so-called top 6, as it were. Everything is about them. It's. I suppose the classic is match of the day. And Mike will probably agree with me. Fulham could win 5-0, but we would still be second from last on match of the day. It's just inherent within the journalistic world of regarding football, sports writers, and everything else. There's nothing you're going to be able to do to change it. You just have to just sit down, take no notice, and just keep doing what we're doing, and just keep moving on. And eventually, someone's going to turn around and say, "Well, actually, they're doing quite well, aren't they?" But
right, and that was actually the counter, Steve.
Right. I don't think you change it, Russ. I don't think you'll change it.
Okay, but what's interesting about this is that in this show that I listened to, the other pundit on the show basically was saying, talk about how great Fulham played, and you don't understand because Fulham played well in this match, and so there is some of that. We are getting some of that, and maybe I should just let it go, but. I guess when I'm looking
not the mainstream press, and it's been like that for years, and it's not going to change. It's not going to change.
I know. I guess after a big victory, I was hoping for something different, and I didn't get it, and I shouldn't be shocked. Okay, so that's on me. Anyways, let's move on, and let's talk about the starting 11. Mike, I'll go right back to you. So I made a huge call in the previous show, because I wanted Bobby Decordova-Reid to be available up front if Silva wanted to go that way. I wanted them to play Mbabu. I know how fans feel about Mbabu, but I want them to make a call on Mbabu, meaning play him, and then if it doesn't work out, you can always go back to Bobby Decordova-Reid. You don't want to do that, but I wanted them to go with a true right back. But also, it just shows what Silva thinks of him because he's not playing him. So obviously he knows a lot more than I do. That was just my call on that. But what were your thoughts about the starting 11? How did you feel about when that came out?
Yeah, well, after the last game, because I thought Kearney had played so well, I did tweet that I thought maybe it would be good for him to start, and that provoked quite an interesting discussion and points of view on. His role really now at Fulham. I thought it would be a good game for him to start, maybe leave Reid out. Bobby at right back, I'm not too fussed about at the moment.
Okay.
After Mabu against Newcastle was dreadful. And so, I'm in no rush to see him again, I have to be honest. I suppose I was surprised Willian started, but then James has struggled to really get going since he joined. So when I saw the team, that was the only surprise for me. I think that Willian, having been out, was back in, and of course every game almost you're sort of thinking is Mitrovic going to be fit? Right. Is he going to start? But yeah, I suppose the team was 10 out of 11 was almost what was expected, really. But and you've got to give it, all the discussions after the weekend's game, and Silva calls it, and he calls it perfectly, doesn't he?
He does, Mike. And here's an interesting thought, and then I'm going to go to Steve on this, because you brought up Kearney, and I know there are many supporters that wanted Kearney, and there's a part of me that understands why, because I think Kearney has a role, not just coming off the bench, Mike. I think he's very effective doing that, but I think against certain opponents where Fulham need to basically, I guess you could say, I look at teams where we're going to have the ball more, maybe we should have Kearney out there. But again, he went with Reed, and it worked here, Mike. But I understand. I do think that there are certain matches where you could use Kearney starting.
Which was last night, and he didn't. So I think that's
right.
So I think that tells you that because think of another team then, Russ. Who else is he going to play against? The teams near the bottom.
No, it's a good point, Mike.
So I think we are seeing exactly what Silva thinks of Kearney in what he can offer at the moment, and also as long as the guys are producing the 2 or 3 of them in the middle there. He's going to struggle to start. So, I think we're going to have to get used to Kearney end of season, probably two starts and 24 subs or whatever.
Yeah. But he certainly has a role. And Steve, I want to get your thoughts on the starting 11 and also our Kearney talk here.
I think I called it that I think we should bring Diop in.
I forgot you were going to bring that up. Okay.
Yeah. Well, only because I think he's going to make mistakes. Anyone at the back will make mistakes, be it Remy or Tosin, whatever. But I think he gives an added presence, not only in defence regarding corners, set pieces, but also in attack. I think midfield, I think Kearney, I think they're not putting him in cotton wool, but I think he is liable to injuries, and I think they're trying to avoid anything like that. But I like the midfield we've got, as a lot of people did not like or do not like particularly Reed.
I know someone that doesn't, but that's beside the point.
Well, I think I would concur. But I think we've got that bite in midfield at the moment, which prevents other teams necessarily ploughing forward. All right, you've got Mitro. We've got to look after him, obviously.
Right.
But I think more interesting is the players who everybody wrote off 6 months ago and how well they're doing. You look at Cabano. You look at Reem.
Yeah.
You look at Bobby. If someone had said before the season you're going to play Bobby BDR at right back, they would have laughed in your face. So I think it's, again, I'm sort of reverting back to what I said earlier. It's this team presence.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what we've got, injuries, whatever, we can carry on. And I think that is so important. And I think, as Mike said with his dad, that was what we had under Tigano. We never, ever gave up, and they believed in themselves as a team.
Yeah, they have this resilience, Steve. I actually agree with this.
Important. And that is so important, I think, at the moment.
Belief in the manager.
Yeah, it comes from the manager. It definitely comes from the manager. Guys, before we move on from the starting 11, I actually want to ask both of you this. Mike, I'll go to you first, because we talked about Diop coming in, and Steve had been basically clamoring for that. And of course, it's now been the last couple matches. I've wanted Diop in. The bigger question is, what does Silva do with Tosin right now? What are your thoughts on his role, and what does this mean? I find this interesting because I was thinking, why don't you go with Tosin and Diop? Nothing against Tim Ream, but what are your thoughts about, and again, that opens up another can of worms, I know. But
well, it did for me at the weekend, because I posted, I think it was on Sunday, I said, maybe it's time to have a look at what Tosin and Diop can do together.
Right.
And
I feel that way too.
And and I absolutely got battered, by you cannot. There is an element where you cannot criticise Tim Ream at the moment, or you cannot make suggestions which mean he does not start. Now, he's playing really well, absolutely playing really well, out of his skin, proving me wrong. I was one who said, we've seen him twice up there, he can't do it. But again, this goes back to, probably the third time we've said about how Silva is influencing things. And you're looking at him, I'm looking at him live last night.
Yeah.
And yes, what is he, 35? But he's, he looks as fit. He looks as quick as he has done from the day he joined. He is better. And that go back to Tigana. We can all remember, Fulham fans who were around then, that players, when he came in, he improved them. The individual coaching improved them. And we've seen that. Steve mentioned Cabano. Yeah. So Silva and his coaching team have the ability,
phenomenal,
to improve players. And so, has Ream done anything wrong that means he should be dropped? No. Should you look at the bigger picture with
that's
Tosin?
Where I'm going, Mike. See, that's where I'm going.
Yeah. So his contract is up.
Right.
And he hasn't signed an extension. If he sat on the bench, is he going to be in the mood to sign one? You don't know, do you really? But Diop, his first couple of appearances were very dodgy, very shaky. The last two games, he's clearly getting back to fitness. He's still you're not 100% certain with him with the ball at his feet, but he's definitely getting better. And I tell you what, I watched, which you wouldn't have seen pre-match.
Right.
So for a good 10 minutes, you had the centre back. So you had Ream crossing the ball over to the right side to Bobby. This is all pre-match in the warm-up. And then Bobby running, crossing the ball in for the strikers. And then you had Diop doing all these long crossfield balls to Robinson. And they did it all game.
I was going to say, they did it all game. Wow.
So
that's pretty cool, Mike. Thanks for sharing. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So they were basically practicing what they actually did in the match.
What they did in the game. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I do have to share this just a little funny from my friend Chris Goodwin, who actually is a Liverpool supporter. Russ Goldman for right back. I'm starting the movement here now. No, I don't think I don't have the pace for that, so I can't do that. But no, I wanted to bring up the whole situation with Tosin because I wanted it because I was looking at the big picture. But as you said, has Tim Ream done anything to be dropped? The answer is no. So I understand why he continues to go with him, but I'm trying to look at what's the future with Fulham, and are you now basically telling Tosin you're not part of the future by sitting him? And that to me is, like you said, would he sign another contract now? I mean, that's. Well,
it's also Russ a kick up the arse to him as well. I mean,
true.
So he's got to reach a level to knock the other guys out as well, and he has to do that in training. And, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, excellent stuff. All right, guys, let's get into the match. And Mike, I'll start with you. And I think it's fair to just say Fulham were dominant in the first half. We'll go through some of the individual moments in the first half, but just through your eyes, you're there, and then I'll get Steve's view, and I'll share mine as well. This started from the get-go. This wasn't a slow build-up. Third minute, you have the opportunity going right down the pitch. Mitro to Willian, beautiful shot. It's funny. I watched it back today. You could see Mitro wanted the ball back. But you know what? It was a good shot. It was a good shot, but it continued over and over again. The only frustrating thing I had coming out of the first half watching it, Mike, is that it wasn't more, is that it was just one goal because they were dominant. But I thought this was their best half of football this entire season.
Yeah, I mean, the first, I would say 20, 25 minutes, we were clearly the better team. We were creating chances. Our set pieces were good. I mean, we haven't mentioned Pereira. You know, his delivery from corners is exceptional. And he's getting criticised, you know, for his end product. But, you know, personally, I really like him. You know, he's one of my probably top 3-4 players of the season so far. But yeah, for 25 minutes, we were knocking on the door. They had a couple of little half chances, I suppose. And then they had the ball, I think, for, you know, a good 5 minutes, you know, 5 to 10 minutes, they were on it, and they seemed to be, you know, we run out of puff for a little bit, but then, you know, we get the corner and, you know, the goal from Reed, you know, it's a cracker. And we had a really good angle where we were sat, and nothing was stopping that. So, and yeah, we get to half time, and you're right. If it had been free, you know, no one could have moaned.
No, and we probably wouldn't be making a big deal of talking about some of the situations in the second half, honestly, either, because it would have been pretty much done and dusted at that point. Okay, Mr. Reynolds, over to you. Your thoughts on the first half?
I was slightly surprised, actually, to be honest. The first half, I didn't expect us to come out quite as quick as we did. But I think we caught them on the hop. I think Mr. Gerrard was probably caught a little bit out, and he's now no longer there. But I think our all-round play, our passing and the quick passing, the quick 1-2s, and as Mike mentioned, the crosses, we're finally actually getting some decent crosses into the ball. And I think, as I said to you, Russ, earlier, I think you look at Reed's goal, that was a better goal than a lot of people give it credit for. Yeah, because my initial reaction was, I don't know what, obviously, Mike, you're up the hammy end, but the initial reaction was it got a slight deflection or whatever. But when you look at it in replays, the goalkeeper was clearly no one in front of him, and it was just the way Reed put it in that corner. And I think actually that was a very, very good goal.
I agree.
You know, it's strange how you get a player like Reed who goes, God knows how many bloody games without getting a goal.
Now he gets
it's
two.
Like, you know, we're almost going down the London buses. You wait forever for one bus, then 3 coming on at the same time. I think it was a good all-round performance. I think we attacked, and I think there was confidence. There was confidence in the team. There was confidence in the passing, the movement of the team, everything. I thought it was a wonderful first half, probably the best of the season, to be honest.
Okay, excellent. Mike, I want to go back to you. I want to focus on the counter, because the one thing that I noticed, and I know you're in the hammy end, so when there's this one situation late in the first half, they take the corner, and there were 5 Fulham players screaming down the other side. That, to me, honestly, Mike, one of my favorite moments of the match. They didn't score here, but it just showed where we're headed, Mike, in my opinion, that they have the ability to counter that quickly from an opposition's corner. That, to me, speaks volumes of where we're headed. In my opinion, I thought that was one of the best moments of the entire match, and they didn't score here because it just showed me the intent that the direction that Fulham are headed, Mike. I'm curious your view of that. You were in the hammy end, so you just saw them screaming.
Yeah, they
ahead.
just raced away. I think that was the one with William when he ran away, wasn't
Yes,
it?
yes.
Yeah, sort of down the left, and all the guys on the right were screaming. But yeah, I mean, but that's the mentality. That's what goes back to what I said earlier. We're under Silver. It's the handbrake is off. You know, the handbrake's been thrown away. So it's we've got the players who can attack and run at pace, and also, you know, Villa, they weren't on it. You know, they weren't playing for their manager. They weren't.
Okay.
You know, they were there to be taken. So
I have a comment for you, Mike. So this is from my friend Chris. So Mike, as you were at the game, was Fulham really, really good, or was Aston Villa really, really bad?
We were really good, but Villa were poor. So they looked like us. They looked like us under the season we got relegated with Parker.
Oh,
you know, you could. It was one of those games as well. You can tell the players they aren't playing for their manager, and you know, they've got good players and they should be doing better. You know, they should be giving us a better game. But I'm not going to take anything away from what we did last night. You know, we were good, and there was a reason we won 3-0, and it's not just because, you know, they're not playing for their manager. We were good, but they weren't at it at all. And yeah, you can imagine how annoyed some of their fans were. Yeah, because that was a non-performance from them at times. You know, they had chances though. You know, into the second half, a couple of chances there, and
in the first half, unfortunately, with Leno. So they did have a few opportunities. I will tell you this, Mike. I actually listened to BBC Radio West Midlands post-match report, and every call it was all about Gerrard and how poor they were, and it was interesting to hear their perspective, the Aston Villa support. So I heard a lot of that. It was interesting. I'm glad I actually listened to that.
Well, if we got time, Russ, at the end, I'll give you my theory on the Gerrard type manager later.
We're definitely going back there. I think I know where you're going on that. I want to end with that. That's awesome. I want to go there, Mike. Okay, so let's move to the second half. So now we have to talk about a controversial moment. It's more controversial now because the red card has been rescinded for this player, for Luis. So, Mike, I'll give you first crack at this. You know, I've watched the replay. I don't think it's clear cut that he headbutted Mitro. So now we're getting that it's been rescinded. So that tells me something. And I love Mitro. Let me just start this, but he went down fairly easy when this happened. Yes, it's our player. Yes, I love Mitro, but I questioned it at the time. I've watched it several times. When you're being there, what was going through your mind? And honestly, what goes around comes around with some of these calls, but I think we should talk about it and be fair on it.
Well, I'll be honest, you know, the board he'd had the challenge, the ball had gone away, and we're looking at the ball. I think there's another challenge, which is a foul, and then suddenly we hear loads of shouting, and Mitro's on the floor, and I can see a couple of Villa players grabbing Luis and sort of moving them away, and so something's gone on. I heard someone say, "Oh, you know, he headbutted him." That was from behind me. I heard someone say that. Yep. So I go on Twitter while it's all going on, and I can see Fulham fans who I trust saying, "Mitro, what were you doing? You know, he's gone down like a sack of potatoes." And then you got other people saying, "Oh, that's a red." You know, so I only saw the replay earlier on, and I've only seen it from that camera angle from a distance. So
that we've all seen.
If there isn't another one, then it doesn't look great for Mitro, I have to say. So, but you know, we've been on the end of some absolutely dreadful VAR calls, and so I'm just going to take it. But Mitro, he just has that in him, doesn't he? You know, and it's disappointing. But
Mike,
we had this discussion
of a game that I just don't like.
Yeah.
I just don't.
I know, but it's him, isn't it? And I'd rather he kept that in him than you know, it reduced his, you know, style or whatever.
Yeah,
but It didn't change the result. In the end,
No.
we were still going to win.
No, and I think that's the bigger picture here, Mike, and that's why I want to talk about this. But I think the three of us can all agree Fulham are still going to win this, regardless of this decision, regardless of the penalty that we're going to talk about as well. Fulham are going to win this match. I truly believe that. I don't care about, again, I think it's fair to talk about all this, but they were going to win this match. Steve, you and I talked about this off air. Your thoughts on the red card for Luis?
I said at the time, I said at the time, this was just after the match, and I'd said to you, two contentious decisions. What Mitro is no different. Let's be honest. It's no different from the likes of Harry Kane and a lot of other strikers, top strikers with the top six clubs. They will go and try and get what they get. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's correct, but it is football. Okay. What I would look at would be the fact that, as Mike said, we looked at one camera angle. The fact that the VAR took it to the referee then went to the touchline and still decided that it was a red card, I find astonishing. I really do, and I'm not at all surprised it's been rescinded. You can get into the refereeing via, that's a massive, as we say, we could do.
I know we do shows on that.
But yeah. I don't personally like it.
Okay.
When players go down like that, but sadly, it's part and parcel of the game now, which I do not like. But you've got no choice. It's not going to change. You're going to have to get up and get on with it. It's going to either go with you or it's going to go against you. But I don't think it was a red.
Okay.
In fact, if I was going to be really brutal. And as usual, I always antagonize.
I know where you're going on this. Go ahead.
I would have given Vitro, in retrospect, a yellow card.
How did I know you were going to go there? Okay.
I know. I speak as I see, mate.
Okay. So let's move on. And Mike, I'm going to go back to you because I want to get your view of this. So I've watched many replays of this. The penalty, the handball. It's handball, but it's very close, Mike. It's extremely close. You had to have gotten a good view of this in the Hammersmith end. So, what is your view of the penalty here? Did Fulham deserve a penalty here? Now, I was telling Steve off air, it reminded me a little bit of the Damien Duff in the Juventus match. A little bit of like with Pedro. It reminded me a little bit of that. I don't know if you probably remember that. But what are your thoughts about this? Because again, what's interesting about it, I think Mitro might score if he doesn't do this. So I'm curious your view.
It was right in front of us, literally right in front of us, and he whacked it one. And yes, it's handball. You could tell it straight away. No hesitation.
Okay.
It's a rule thing, Russ. So you're either someone who says that kind of thing shouldn't be a handball if it's like he's a yard away from him, 2 yards if that, and but that's the rules, and so it's handball. You take it, and they didn't protest as much as you would expect. They knew it was a handball, so okay. I had no worries about it. And it just delayed. If we hadn't got it, it just delayed our third goal anyway.
Okay, excellent stuff. Steve, your thoughts on this?
I agree with Mike entirely. I don't think it's, from a personal point of view, as a defender, you go in, you're turning your back. As the ball comes in, it comes off your leg and hits your arm in milliseconds. It's bloody harsh. But as Mike very, very rightly said, it is the rules. And this is the problem. at times. There is no real definition of the rules regarding handball. But hell, we had some absolutely outrageous decisions against West Ham. So
yeah, that's the kind of way I look at it. I mean, it's
I'll take it. I don't like it, but I'll take the penalty.
okay.
At the end of the season, that penalty or that whatever, the sending off and the handball could mean the difference of staying up or going down. Personally, I think we'll be probably, as far as I'm concerned, we'll be back in the Europa League. It's only a matter of time before Fulham take world dominance over once again. But there you go.
Oh, let's hope so, Steve. I'm just going to share some comments here. So this is from Gary D. Never a penalty, but we'll take it somewhere similar to what we're talking about here. Intent or no intent, and then Gary's really going on this no way a penalty. Let's see what Brian says. Never a penalty, but we're all talking historically now, unfortunately. Okay, good stuff. Good stuff, guys. All right. So Fulham scored the third goal, and Mike, this is an own goal. Sorry, let's go to the third goal. Your thoughts on the goal that put the match away? I think Fulham were just cruising after this, and there wasn't much going on really after the goal, but your thoughts on the own goal? And again, Cabano was good in this match, so I give a lot of credit to Cabano here.
Yeah, I mean, he deserved it. There was a lot of good link-up play on both wings, and Cabano switched in the game from the left hand to the right, and this time it was good play down that side, and he gets the shot in, and sometimes you look at players, just get it inside that 6-yard box, because sometimes there can be a deflection, and it was that kind of goal. And there's a player who for probably 3 or 4 years loaned out to Borough, he would have 2 or 3 good games, and then you get Silva, and I personally think a lot of it is down to Borough Malte. They basically go to him, you're a winger, your job as a winger is to get to the byline, get into the penalty box, get crosses in, and since the beginning of last season, he's just a revelation. And I never thought he had a lot of the ability we've seen in the last 2 years. And, it's just keep it simple. Don't confuse players. Just play to your strengths. And that's what he's doing at the moment. And yeah, it was thoroughly deserved third goal for us. And okay, PE doesn't get it to him, but I'm sure he'll find the net, next few games.
Okay, excellent. All right, guys, let's end the show. We're going to talk about some other subjects, but we're coming up next. We're going to talk about man of the match. Okay, Mike, I'll go to you first. Give me your man of the match. If you're watching live, feel free to share your thoughts on man of the match, and I'll try to share those as well. Mike, who's your man of the match? There were some very good performances here.
Well, I thought every player who was on the pitch played well. Even the subs when they came on, did their job even for the last few minutes. For me, it's either Bobby or Willian, and because I thought Bobby Reid, he did a great job at right back. Yeah. I don't think he put a foot wrong. Defended really well, and then when he got into attacking positions, did well as well. But I think he got it off the website as well. But I'm going to go for Willian, a player I didn't want, and he's certainly not as fast as he used to be, but he's got some tricks. He's got the experience, and he was excellent last night and thoroughly deserved the ovation he got when he was subbed. And so for me, he's my man of the match.
Okay, Steve, over to you. Who's your man of the match?
I would like to say, I'd like to give a shout out to Diop because I think he did well. But I think as purely from positional wise, what Bobby Decker did, I think that was more important. Don't get me wrong, Willian, I thought was outstanding, no two ways about it. But I think as a player being put in a position you're not necessarily used to, and you've made a hell of a lot of, and you've still got the ability to go and attack. I would give it to Bobby Decker, purely on a technical basis, let's say.
Okay, excellent stuff. All right. So, Mike, I want to go back to you to end the show. We're going to talk about a couple topics. Oh, I do want to share a little man of the match. So let's see. So Gary D has William. Chris Goodwin says BBC Radio 5 Live was raving on William. I will give it to William. And Val Colossi says William. Let's see what Ralph says. William only signed because of Solomon injury, and hopefully Solomon comes back soon. Okay, Mike, I want to go back to, we will give a very quick preview, our thoughts on Leeds United, but you had something you want to talk to us about in regards to Gerrard and possibly another manager. Am I going to Parker on this? I'm just curious.
Well, no, I'll tell you what. I mean, I've been thinking about it a long time. So coaching, and you have it in American football, I'm sure you do, and that kind of thing, is coaching goes through cycles. All of a sudden the big thing is 5 at the back, 3 at the back.
Right.
Diamond formation, all this kind of stuff. So, whatever the current fad is, those players fall into it. But I have this view that you have managers. Southgate is just he's before Gerrard and Lampard and Parker, but they're all the same kind of ilk. They're probably, and certainly the generation of Parker, Gerrard and Lampard are from that. The same coaching badges. They've been on the same courses. They've read the same books. They've had the same teachers. And you look at the teams they put out, the way they play, and they're all just carbon copies of each other. And Southgate is probably, he's ahead of them in experience, but his style is similar as well. And it's this sort of waiting for things to happen. I'm watching the Villa team last night, and I compared them to Parker's team when we went down. And Parker's team waited for something to happen to get that goal somehow, and then hold off. And that's what Villa were looking to do last night while it was 0-0. And I get the same when I look at Everton and certainly England. It's just a theory is that they've all learned the same way. And you see managers like Silva, and you see Potter didn't do that. So Potter, he went and learned abroad and come back. And it just says to me that there's something wrong possibly in the way they sort of learned the game.
Well, what's interesting is that I was actually watching a video clip of a different talkSPORT show, and they were saying that the situation with Gerrard is that he's reactive, Mike, and that actually brought me back to Parker, that he's a reactive manager instead of a proactive manager. I think that's pretty accurate. I don't know if that goes through the young English managers. Like you said, they're all reading the same books. Maybe that's kind of the way that they're being taught to manage.
Yeah, I mean, that's, like I say, it goes through cycles, but it just seems that this particular age group, just turned 40 sort of age group, that whatever they were learning when they were 30, I'm not so sure.
Okay. Steve, I'm going to bring you back in. What are your thoughts of all this?
I don't know. I would like to ask Mike, how much pressure when you become manager of a team, how much pressure is coming from the owners of clubs that are altering your ethos, how you really want to play? How much pressure is it coming from the owners? The fact that if you cannot afford to lose, so you revert to a boring a boring bloody team, basically. Just out of interest, Mike, what do you think?
And I'm sure the pressure not to lose and just try and get points somehow is the way it is. Parker philosophy was definitely let's try and get a goal, hold back, or even if we were 1 or 2 up, it'd go cautious. And because the pressure is immense, Gerrard did well in Scotland, but the pressure is okay. The pressure on Rangers is massive, but there's only 2 teams. Let's be honest, and but we've seen it with other managers. They go into their shell and they change. I can't play the way I want to play, and also how good are they as a coach? So we went back earlier about Silva, how he improves players.
Yeah.
Do these new managers, coaches, are they being taught to improve players, or is it all about the team? Is it all about the structure? Yeah. So you're always going to play 4-3-3. So if that player goes out, that player comes in, that's how he should have performed. And I do joke, and Russ knows I've done this over the years. Yep. We're going to coach. We get a really exciting player, and I go, we're going to coach that ability out of him. And and Parker did it with Lookman. I'm convinced of it.
Great example.
And some of the other players. So you've got, Cabano was shunted off elsewhere, and others, and we just become the pressure is there not to lose. And you're right. It's they don't get time, let's be honest. But then you go back to Jokanovic, great season. We went up, and but he couldn't get anything going, and he wanted to play a freer style, and it just didn't work for him. Whereas Silva, I think Silva's got the advantage because he came off the back of actually winning the championship, and also having, I think, more influence over the transfers. So yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to share this comment. It's kind of big, so I'm just going to share a little bit. Sorry, Mike. Just I can't believe no one out of the 3 of you picked Harrison Reed. That surprises me because he quietly just gets on with his job. I was just going to mention that small part of it. Mike, we really haven't talked too much about Harrison Reed. Your thoughts about him in this match?
Well, as I said, I thought every player played well. So, I mean, if I mention Reed, someone would say you didn't mention Ream. So I kept it to just the 2. But okay. I mean, his goal was cracking. We all know he's a little dynamo in there running around all over the place. And I'm gonna be a broken record, but you have to say Silva saw something in him that changed the way he plays. He moved him further forward.
That's the amazing part of him.
Yeah,
he's not playing the role that we thought he was going to play. We thought he was going to be a 6, Mike. We thought he was just, and he has changed the way. And dare I say, he's now gotten goals out of him, which I wasn't expecting. So he's changed his ways of playing. Of Harrison Reed, an established footballer, changed the way he plays. I mean, that's quite fascinating, and also a testament not just to Silva but to Reed that he took to the coaching.
Yeah, because I could say I thought Robinson's performance last night, although not flashy, was probably one of his most professional performances, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does, Mike. It does, Mike. All right. Just for time's sake, because I do want to wrap up the show. I want to thank my guests for being with me for so long. I do want to talk just very briefly on the Leeds United match. Mike, I'll get your thoughts and then I'll go to Steve. We won't spend too much time here. And it's funny, I just did, I was a guest on a Leeds United show, and we were talking about how Fulham could potentially be a manager killer. Wouldn't that be great? If they could get rid of Jesse Marsch and then get rid of Frank Lampard. Wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know if that's going to happen. But I said on this show, and I want to get your thoughts, this is a tough matchup because of the way Leeds United play. They really haven't changed much from Jesse Marsch, from Bielsa. They're still going to play with that intensity for 90-plus minutes. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on Leeds United? I think this is going to be a very tough match for Fulham here.
Yeah, I do as well, and especially from Thursday to Sunday. I think it's going to be tough for us. But there are there are no easy games in the Premier League. But you know, I'm confident we can get a point or all three. He's under pressure, and
A lot. Yes,
yeah,
it
it
is.
will be interesting. I saw it mentioned on Twitter. We could have a hat trick of managers go if we get 3 wins on the trot. So yeah, but which makes a change because we're usually used to playing the team that's just sacked their manager. So I'll take that. But no, Leeds are always a tough place to go to. I've been there numerous times. Very intimidating. But if we are going to progress, if we are going to make ourselves at least a mid-table-ish team, then we shouldn't be going to Leeds overly worried. We're giving them a good game, and hopefully we can come away with something.
Okay, and I've already seen this comparison. This is what I guess you could say concerns me, but it's different season, but it's the approach. What Coventry City did to Fulham last season, that they basically pressed the hell out of us. That's what concerns me, Mike. But I think we're a different side now.
Yeah, I mean, Coventry last year, it was just one of those fluky teams and 2 games. And I'd rather not talk about the away game which I went to.
Me of all people, I should never bring them up again. Me of all people.
No,
but yeah, no, definitely. Steve.
No, I think he's learned from that. He's learned from that. We've got better players.
Okay, Steve, over to you. Your thoughts on Leeds United?
Oh dear, Leeds. Intimidating place to be and to go to. I've been there many times with Fulham, in the good times and bad times. Leeds only have one way of playing at the moment, or it would appear. I think midfield is going to be important. Ellen Road is no easy place to go. Given the choice, I think I'd probably agree with Mike. I think a draw would be I'd be happy with that. 3 points, I'd be
ecstatic.
I'll buy you a pint next time I'm in Boston, mate.
Great show, fantastic show, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us on very short notice. Of course, Steve, thank you as well. I really appreciate it, Mike.
No, thanks, Russ, and it was good to speak to you, Steve. And just keep up the good work, Russ. And I'll join in whenever I can.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, I am going to wrap up the show. Before we go, just want to mention one last time to please do subscribe on YouTube. I know I mention that all the time, but it really does help other Fulham supporters and supporters of other clubs find us. So do subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And as I always mention, Cottage Talk is now part of the talkSPORT Fan Network. Okay. That's going to do it for this episode of Cottage Talk. For Steve Reynolds and Mike Gregg, I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, part of the talkSPORT Fan Network.